Okay, well, hello. This is Non-Monogamous Mark coming to you from my home office in Seattle, Washington, where I had a little bit of a disruption getting this started here this evening. I didn't have any internet signal, it kept telling me, so I had to reboot my complete system, and now I'm able to be here and happy to be here. I hope that you're happy to be here as well. So at any rate, let me introduce myself. Like I said, I'm Non-Monogamous Mark, and I'm the executive director and the co-founder of Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association. And after having lived most of my adult life as a monogamous religious individual, then 11 years ago, my wife and I opened up our marriage. And it took us 2 years to transition from the monogamous relationship that we had had for 25 years when I first brought it up to her that maybe we should try an open marriage. And then finally, after 27 years of our monogamous marriage, we opened our marriage up and we became non-monogamous at that point. Now, within non-monogamy, there are many different shades, and like 50 Shades of Gray. Well, there are many different shades of non-monogamy as well. And what we like to do is we like to put them all under an umbrella, just like the many different shades of there was years ago there was the gay people, and there were then lesbians, and then there were transvestites and transsexuals, and they had all these different terms that they were trying to kind of figure out all these different groups and what have you. And so what happened is that somebody in the travel industry, as there were really, the cities when it comes to travel, and also companies when it comes to travel, they were wanting to market to that niche. And they were seeing that niche growing and emerging, but there were just like a little niche here, the lesbians, and a little niche here, the gays, and then transsexuals, and how do we identify all this? And then there are the people that identify themselves as being queer and all kinds of different things. And so somebody in the travel industry came along and says, we should just kind of create a little umbrella for them and just use the acronym LGBT. And then, of course, it became LGBTQ, and now there's lots of different alphabet, depending upon who you talk to, that's added to that. But it provides a much clearer way of being able to take and think about and concepts about this group of people. And I find that it's the same way with people who are ethically and consensually non-monogamous. You see, there's people who are monogamous, like I was, and then there are those people who are ethically and consensually non-monogamous, and that means that they are not cheating, they are not being dishonest or deceitful or lying to the people that they are engaging with, but they are being open and honest and forthright about their sex life and also their emotional life. And so that's then the non-monogamous group. But we like to try to distinguish that a little bit, and we call it ethical and consensual non-monogamous people. Because you see, there are people out there that are practicing non-monogamy, but they're not doing it ethically. And so, in other words, and not doing it ethically, they're not open and they're not honest about it. They're not telling their partners, oh, yes, I had sex with this person, or I want to have sex with this person, or like, oh, I had sex with this person the other night, and I know that, that's cool between us, but our agreement is that I'm supposed to use a condom every time that I have sex with someone, and I didn't use a condom. And so these kinds of things then become things that you have to be able to take and have full disclosure on. And that's where then we put in this term ethical, and then consensual. Consensual means then that, for instance, if I'm going to engage sexually with someone, that first of all, then that person gives their consent. And then not only that, but then all other individuals. And I guess I want to specify here, it doesn't matter if it's we're talking about sex or emotional connections, deeply emotional connections, like being in love with a person. And usually, that you can have sex but not be emotionally involved with a person. And you can also then be emotionally involved with a person, but not be sexually involved. And of course, then when we talk about the subject, we also have to think, well, like, okay, what is sex? If I am like involved with someone online, for instance, yes, you can be involved with someone that is halfway around the world that you likely are never going to meet. However, you can get involved with that person emotionally, very deeply involved with that person. And so that's then where this whole part of openness and honesty comes about, in that you're not feeling like you have to hide that, and you can't divulge that to any of your partners. For instance, if you have one or more partners that you are in, other people that you're involved in. And so the idea of ethical means that it's open and honest. Consensual means that the people involved have all given consent. So, for instance, then the people involved, and obviously, then if I'm wanting to have a relationship, whether that be just a one-time fling sexual relationship, whether that be an ongoing sexual relationship, or friends with benefits sexual relationship, or a deeply loving relationship that involves emotions and sex, or there's a whole gamut of different things that you can think of there. Something that's really casual, or something that's casual means that there's not going to be any strings attached, but on the other hand, it's ongoing, for instance. So there's a lot of different ways to frame this and to look at this. But the concept that it's consensual means that it's consensual between me and that person. So in other words, there's no rape involved, or no you're crossing a boundary. So that person, for instance, says, well, we can have oral sex, and but then does not consent for anything else. Does not say, yes, you can take and do this to me, or you can do that to me. There's got to be full consent of every activity involved as well. Because, there's frequently situations that come along where, that I didn't consent to that, but the person just assumed. And you can't assume these things. You have to communicate these things. If you have desires, if you have interests, you can't assume these things. You do have to get consent by communicating about these things, communicating. One of the fun things to do, in fact, if you're starting to court someone new, is to have a sex planning date. And it can be a lot of fun, a kind of a juicy, fun date, where you go out to a coffee shop or somewhere, or go out to a park for a picnic. And, you start talking about the things that you like and you want to do with each other. And then you can start talking about, what you're going to consent with each other. And so that's something as well. And so that's then the consensual part. But then consensual also means that the other people who are involved in a relationship have consented as well. And so, for instance, then I have two partners, and my two partners know then I am non-monogamous, and I'm going to be dating other women, and I'm going to be having sex with other women. And that's something then that, for me, if they want to, basically anybody who wants to be in a relationship with me, that's just something that they have to accept and go along with. It's not something where I give them the choice. If they want a relationship with me, if not, then they cannot be in a relationship with me. But it's something where then they have the opportunity to opt out and not be in a relationship with me, or they have the opportunity to consent and be in a relationship with me, knowing that I'm going to be having sex with other people. Now, it's true, though, that there are safe sex issues that you have to be involved as well. And so that's where you need to take, and like myself, part of my journey was that 2 years I told you about, when my wife went from, we went from having a monogamous relationship. I brought it up, talked to her about it. And then we went 2 years later, and we actually opened our relationship up and started practicing our ethical and consensual non-monogamous lifestyle. When that happened, then that 2 year transition phase, we had a lot to learn. We had a lot to learn about STDs and STIs. What's the difference between an STD and an STI? Because see, from our religious roots, where we came from, is we had the fear of God struck into us. Is that yes, if you have anybody, if you have sex with anybody outside of your lifetime monogamous relationship, your one and only, then God's curse to you is that He's going to deliver a STD to you or an STI to you, and that's going to be God's curse to you. But no, I had to come to a different understanding and realize that and I walked away from my religion and having some of these different understandings about things. But so anyway, the thing is, then I had to, because I didn't have any knowledge and information about STIs, and that's something that we can talk about another time here on video as well. But I didn't have any knowledge, and so some people, the extent of their knowledge, even though they're out there living their non-monogamous lifestyle, the extent of their knowledge is that, well, as long as a condom is used, then everything's good. Well, do you realize that a condom will only protect for those STIs and STDs that happen with an exchange of fluid? That is providing the condom contains all the fluid. And that there are other STDs and STIs that are by skin-to-skin contact. And so if that STI is in a place that is not covered up by the condom, then you can still transmit an STI to someone that is a non-curable STI. You can transmit that by using a condom. And so people don't really know these things. They don't realize these things. And so part of my transition of reinventing my life from a monogamous life to an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life was I didn't want to have one myself. I didn't want to get an STI or an STD. And I particularly then didn't want to take and pass an STI or an STD along to any of my partners. And so the other thing is that I had to kind of reposition my thoughts about STIs and STDs. And this is something that it took a long time. I mean, I've been involved in non-monogamy now for 11 years, but it took me, I'm going to say, probably 7 or 8 of those years to kind of move my own self along. Because you see, the way that I start out in my non-monogamous lifestyle was looking at every single person that I would take and engage with, looking at them and thinking about them, that assuming that they automatically had an STI to give me. And so assuming that, then, I mean, boy, the protections were extreme, and that I would take and what have you. And the thing is that I've come to learn that for the most part, if you arm yourself with enough knowledge, and that most STIs you don't have to be really all that concerned about, because most of them are like, catching the flu, and take an antibiotic and for a couple of days and give it some time and it's gone. And so most of your STIs are in that category, and some are not. And so this is part of the educational process that I had to go through and learn about these things myself. And so that's part of the process, I think, that's just smart and very wise to do if you are considering a non-monogamous lifestyle, is to inform and educate yourself about STIs. I remember when I was just getting started, it was probably about a year into my my open marriage. My wife and I, we would go out to different meetup groups that we joined in order to meet people. And so we went out to this meetup group, and we all got together and at a coffee shop and had coffee. And I met this really lovely school librarian, and she was just a peach of loveliness. And we really had a really good vibe going between us there that Saturday morning at the coffee shop. And at the end of the time then, and yes, she was introduced to my wife as well. We didn't come out and say that we're non-monogamous or anything like that, but she was introduced to my wife, and we just had a real good vibe going. And so we at the end of the time, I said to her, I said, well, Susan, I'd really like a chance to get to talk to you and get to know you a little more and see, what we might be able to enjoy together. And so I'd really enjoy that if you wouldn't mind if I can have your phone number. And so sure enough, she gave me her phone number. Well, then I called her. We started having some conversations on the phone. And the first conversation that I had, I said, well, you met my wife, and first of all, I would like you to know that I am in a non-monogamous open relationship. My wife and I are free to date other people. And so I'd be happy to answer any of your questions about that. You also can have my wife's phone number, so you can talk to her about that. And so if you have any questions at all, we want to make sure that you're fully comfortable and knowing that this is totally consensual in our lifestyle. And so, of course, then with that opened the door where Susan and I started to talk about, that my whole experience, my experience of being monogamous for 27 years, and then a year prior to that, opening up our marriage. And so we really started to discuss that. And so she was like, oh, okay, I'm open to dating you. And so we went ahead and we set up our first date. And about a week went by from when we set that to when we could actually have that first date. And so that week's time, apparently the wheels were kind of turning in her mind. And so when we had that first date, we met at a park, and we went for a walk in the park, and we strolled hand in hand in the park, because we really did have a very nice connection. And but strolling hand to hand and walking along just right there on the beach. It was a waterfront park, and right there on the beach here in Washington, we've got a lot of waterfront parks. I'm on the Puget Sound and saltwater, and it comes in off the ocean, and so we had a really nice time just walking along the beach. But there was something that was bothering her, and so about a third of the way down the beach, there's benches along the beach so that we could sit down and the people can sit down on. And so I said to her, I says, well, would you like to have a seat here so we can just sit and relax and talk? And so we did that, and just there overlooking the salt water, beautiful, beautiful day. And she started to have a tear. And she says, well, Mark, you've been so forthright and open and honest and caring. It's just, I just really have to tell you this, and I'm brokenhearted to tell you this. It's just, I just really don't think that we can go anywhere with a relationship, because I know I'd want to have sex with you, and I'm probably never going to have sex again. My husband, my now divorced ex-husband, he was an airline pilot, and I learned that he cheated on me. And how I learned that is that I developed these little sores in my private spots, and one day and decided I better go to the doctor and get those checked out because they weren't normal at all. And so I went to the doctor and got checked out, and they ran some tests, and they came back and says, yes, you have genital herpes. And so she was just really all broken up about that. And that had happened just about a year and a half prior. She immediately then sought a divorce, divorced her husband, and she at that point didn't think that she would ever meet anybody that she wanted to date. But then she met me. And so, and she felt like that instead of just telling me no, that we couldn't date when we were talking on the phone or what have you, she felt that she felt a need to meet with me and talk to me in person. And I sat there on that bench holding her because she was in tears over this, and explained to me that yes, that she is just going to live with this because there's no cure for herpes, and she's going to live with it, and it's just something she has to live with, and it's doubtful that she'll ever have another relationship. And so, and I'll never forget that experience. And I had another woman then that, probably about a year later, and she came and she said, "Well, Mark, I would be she was a single woman, and she's widowed, and she had been widowed for about a year, and she says, I would love to date you." But I feel like I'd like to come and sit down and have a little conversation with you and your wife. And so I invited her to my home here, and we went into our living room, and she sat on the couch, and my wife and I sat on the other couch. We had two couches in our living room. And we then, had a little chit chat and conversation. And then she said, "Well, I have something I want to tell you." And she says that it's important for you to know that I have herpes, genital herpes. And there are many different kinds, strains of herpes, but the most common are oral herpes, which would be cold sores around your lips. The other kind is genital herpes, which are sores around your genitals. But you can also get oral herpes on your genitals. You can get genital herpes on your mouth as well. But so anyway, I'm not trying to educate you on all this stuff, but so she took and spent about an hour with us in conversation. And she was the first person who took time with us to educate us about the issue with herpes. And so the result of that was that I decided that I was not going to date her. And my wife and I afterwards, then we talked about it. And so I decided that I was not going to date her. And but then, this issue kept coming up, and so I kept learning more and more. And one of the things that I found out is, I'm not going to go into all the different things that I have learned, but one of the things that I've learned is that with herpes, and now even with AIDS or HIV, that there are medications that basically makes it as safe to have sex with that individual as it is for a woman using a birth control pill and not getting pregnant. And so if you've ever trusted a birth control for a woman not to get pregnant, then you can trust these medications as well. But it's just important that you arm yourself with knowledge and information in this area. And so tonight, the conversation that I wanted to have is about options. And that you always have options in your life, and your options can have consequences that will, can last for years. And so with us at Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, where we focus on helping you to make to have options financially in your life, so that you can offer yourself to the world at the highest level you possibly can offer yourself. And so that means that basically you're following your passions. And so we want to be able to help you to financially have options, so that maybe then if you have options, you can then offer yourself to the world in a capacity, in a way that you can't do now. So there was a time when when I became 11 years ago, when I became non-monogamous, I wanted to use my business skills to offer myself to the world to help people to know that they can be non-monogamous. It can be ethical and it can be consensual, and it also can be a totally viable way to live your life as a fully sexually liberated, non-monogamous person. And so I wanted to be able to utilize my business skills to be able to help people to make that journey and help the world, the society we live in, to also be in a place where they are accepting of people who live a sexually liberated, non-monogamous lifestyle. And so I wanted to use my business skills. But you see, when I was back 11 years ago, where I was in my life at that time, I just financially was not at a place where I could go ahead and kind of shift gears and reinvent my life and then do this. And so I came to a place in my life where I got the option to do that. And then that's why then I am here tonight as the co-founder and the executive director of Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, so that I can help you to live the life of your dreams, which is a sexually liberated, ethical, and consensual non-monogamous lifestyle. That it increases, we talk about your trajectory, it increases your abundance, your liberation, and your freedom when it comes to your finances, when it comes to your health, and also when it comes to your sex life. And so in talking about then the options tonight, that's again the subject of tonight then, is that we're oftentimes we are presented with many options in our life. You know, what option do I pick? And so when you with these options, one of the things that you want to please ask yourself is, will this option increase my abundance, my liberation, and my freedom? You know, you want all three of those. You don't want to just have one of them. So for instance, you know, you could take and quit your job today, and you could go, particularly if you're here in Seattle, because there's a big group of people, there's camps all over Seattle that are homeless camps. You know, to get your camping gear and quit your job and then go down there and get your whatever check that we give the homeless people every month, so that they get at least some subsidies, you know, and some way of surviving and living out of a tent and living in these homeless camps. You know, you can say, hey, that's freedom. You know, I don't have a job anymore. I don't have a boss anymore. I got total freedom. I got freedom of my time. Every day when I get up, I get to choose totally everything. I don't have a boss telling me what to do. I get to have freedom of my time. Well, so I guess you could say that that's a level of freedom. But remember, we want to keep all three of these in some harmony here, and that is your abundance, your liberation, and your freedom. And so how much abundance are you going to have in your life if you do that? Now, yes, there have been people out there who have for a short time, it was part of their plan. In fact, I had an employee years ago that I hired in the business that I had years ago. And this employee, she was a lesbian, and she had a girlfriend that racked up a bunch of bills and then broke up with her, and my employee was left holding all these bills that there was no way she could afford to pay. And so she decided, you know, what I need to do now. And she decided to go ahead, and it was going to take her a year and a half to pay all those bills off. But she says, you know, if I get a part-time job and keep my job there with Mark, and then go out and get another part-time job in the evenings, because I get off every night by 5 o'clock. And so go out and get another part-time job, and then work that part-time job, and then we'll move out of my apartment and move into a tent and live at the state park. Here, there's a state park in this area that has, you know, you can, as long as you keep paying the fees to be there every week and every month, you can live there year round. And so Seattle is not like my other home that I live in Ventura, California, whereas in Ventura, it's warm and wonderful, mostly almost year round. I mean, it's very rarely gets below 60 degrees, you know, and Seattle is wet and drizzly, cold, miserable. You get snow and ice, not snow and ice like they get like in Detroit, Michigan, or other places, like Boston gets. Oh my gosh, New England, and I mean that gets snow and that gets cold. But so we're not to that extreme here, but it's miserable living out there. But nonetheless, that was then the thing that she says, this is my responsibility. And I had so much respect for her that she went ahead and took on that responsibility. And for her, then it was part of her plan that for a year and a half, she'd be able to take the money she was paying for rent, and she'd be able to take the money that she was earning on a part-time job, and she'd be able to then be able to pay off all of her debts. And she went with that plan, she followed that plan, and she paid all those debts off. And so I was very proud of her. So that's the idea. Is there's this concept where you want a harmony of your abundance, liberation, and freedom, and freedom then is not coming in a situation where you're going to go join the homeless people, and that's not necessarily that's freedom in some respects, but there's no abundance and there's really no liberation there either. And so when it comes to financially, then we talk about those three concepts: your abundance, your liberation, your freedom. And so if you have options, whether it be an option for a job or an option for a relationship or an option as to what to do for 4th of July, ask yourself, use this as kind of a guideline, a measurement. How is this going to affect my abundance, my liberation, and my freedom? In my finances, in my health, and in my sex life. And that's another thing with I regularly have these guys, these people who will contact me, and most of the time it's a guy. Once in a while it's a woman, and they're at these crossroads that we come to. We've got options at these crossroads, and so they're at a crossroads about their relationships. And they really like this person. Things are going along smooth and really well. But this person wants a monogamous relationship. I'm chatting with someone now that she says, I don't understand it because I've been involved in non-monogamous relationships. She's in her late 30s. And she says, but these guys, they start talking with them and they're all just fine with non-monogamy because that's the way I want to live my life, is non-monogamously. And so it's like, by the time I'm at 38 years old, and I kind of lived enough life already to know really what is more natural out there for me. And so she said, but these guys that come along and these guys fall in love with me, and then they want to lock me down. And they want an exclusive relationship, and it's only them. And it's like, let's be each other's one and only, and all that. So there's these roads, and these are just I really love these guys. This woman, she's full of a lot of love and energy, and she's when I start dating a guy like this, and I fall in love with him, and then it's like he wants to take me off the market, so I'm not going to love anybody else, and I just can't go for that. And so in that case now, then one of the things that we want to evaluate the options that are starting to come to us. And we want to look at those options, take a step back a little bit and see if there's a pattern in these options. And if there's a pattern, like in her case, the pattern is that these guys come along, but then when it comes to getting serious and getting involved in a committed relationship, they all want a monogamous committed relationship with her. And so the thing with her then is that, because that's a pattern. And if you see a pattern like that, then that's telling you something about your own energy that you are putting out. And when you're putting out an energy where then you're attracting to you, in her case, a monogamous individual, or somebody that is not necessarily, hasn't been always monogamous, but he meets her and it's like, man, I don't want to share you with anybody. See, he's looking at his own insecurities and stuff. Or you get these guys that they have what they call OPP situation going on. I dated a woman like this myself for a couple of dates, and found out that her husband had an OPP scenario, and that she had always dated women. She was a bisexual woman, and so she had always dated women before me, and it was great with her husband. I mean, she'd bring home a girlfriend, and they'd have a threesome, and he just thought that was great. But then suddenly she fell in love with me, and so she wanted to date me. And so we had some dates, and then her husband, though, says, no, I've got a one penis policy. That means there's only one penis that's going to go inside of you, even though, yes, you bring home your girlfriends, and my penis can go inside multiple women, but there's only one penis that's going to go inside of you. And it's called an OPP, one penis policy. And so, that then was the kind of the end of things for us. But there's a lot of guys that are like that, and it's just they're very insecure, and that there are women that come to these places in their relationship, where they think, well, yeah, I'd like to have an open relationship, and I'm bisexual, and so what I'll do is I'll start getting involved with other women, and then get my husband involved with these other women. And this woman, this was her thinking, and that's why she had always then had only women girlfriends prior to meeting me. And in fact, she knew me for at least a year before I knew her. That she had followed me online, and she was in love with me by the time that I actually met her. And so then it's like sparks were just really, chemistry and everything was just really great between us when we both actually ended up meeting together. And so, but she had then always thought, if I have these girlfriends, then that I share my girlfriends with my husband, then when I want to have a boyfriend, then my husband probably shouldn't have any problem with me sharing sharing me with another guy. And turns out, though, that just wasn't the case. And so these are all options that when you're getting involved in relationships, that you got to make sure that you don't get into a relationship where then you go down the road a little ways and you find that you really end up being stuck and obligated, and you find you're not in the relationship that gives you the abundance, the liberation, and freedom sexually that you want. The abundance, the liberation, and the freedom in the health that you want. The abundance, the liberation, and the freedom financially you want. You see, because these all affect each other. Because, if we're in a situation with our emotions or sexual relationships that things aren't going well, guess what? We have a tendency of not eating the right foods, not taking care of ourselves with our body and our health, and things can kind of take a little bit of a dip and turn downhill. And we may even have a partner that will not really care and will not say, well, hey, we got to go out hiking, and we got to go out and go to the gym and all that. You may have a partner that doesn't really care. And also about your food and your dietary intake, and it just soon go ahead and feed you a lot of meat and sweets and sugared stuff and meat, like I said, and just stuff that isn't going to help you to be healthy. And then, of course, financially, if you are emotionally or sexually not in a really great place, then it's hard for you to thrive. If you are just, like I mentioned, I think last week, this guy that I've been chatting with, and haven't chatted with him this past week, but I was chatting with this guy, that he's locked into a relationship where his wife, he says, no, my wife's never going to open up. And so sexually, he is pent up and frustrated. Kind of reminds me of where I used to be, for 25 years, I lived that frustration. Oh my gosh. I know what that is like. And it seems like women, they can turn that off. I've talked to many women about this over my last 11 years, that women have this ability to just turn it off. It's harder than to, once you turn it off, it's harder to turn it back on again. I know women too that were struggling when they wanted to turn that back on. It was hard to get that turned back on. But they can shut it down. They can just turn off and have all that desire and interest. They're just like, I just don't need sex. I don't want sex, and it doesn't have to be a part of my life. But for us guys, it's like we just turn into horny animals out there that's like, oh, we can't think about anything else. And so if that is starting to plague you in that way, then how does that impact your ability to create a life financially where you are thriving at the highest level that you can go out there and perform financially, whether that be for a job or also be in business, or maybe both, a business, or go to work in a job and then have a business you're building on the side. If you're so pent up and frustrated sexually and you're a guy, it makes it really difficult to keep your brain functioning in a way where you can keep your mind on business. And particularly keep your brain functioning, keep your mind on business, where then you're not just like slobbering all over every woman that'll come along. I mean, I'm talking from experience here. Can you tell that? Because I've been there. Yes, you can't go out there and have the behavior where you're slobbering all over that woman. You can't have that kind of behavior, but you know what it's like you're going through inside. You know what you're feeling like. And so I'm not sure who a while back joined us here in the live stream on this little discussion tonight. But if you do have any comments or any questions of me, please go ahead and enter those in the chat. And thank you for joining us. So anyway, to continue on though, is that you have these options that come along in your life. And these options come along in your life. You want to, one, look at them and be able to evaluate their patterns that they fall in. In myself, let me just step back a little bit and ask a question. Have you ever noticed, and have you ever heard the saying, that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? There's that saying, but have you ever actually noticed that seems to be true? The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. There's a couple other things here too. Have you ever noticed that bad things come in threes? Have you ever heard that statement? Bad things come in threes, or also good things come in threes. And why is that? And how about, have you ever had what seemed like a streak of bad luck? Now, I'm not talking about going to the casino or going to the card table or anything of that nature, but just your life has taken a turn and it just seems like you've got a streak of bad luck and you're just like not getting out of it. Have you ever seen that happen with other people, or have you ever had that happen with yourself? Hey, thanks for joining me. Can you talk? I am talking. Are you hearing me? Hey, are you hearing me? Well, anyway, I will continue on here. Okay, good. Thank you very much. If you have any questions or comments, please post them, and I'll be happy to get to your questions. And that's good. Yeah, you can't talk with the live stream video. It's just a one-way interaction going on here, but the way you interact with me is by doing what you're doing, typing and making comments. And so whatever comment you have to make, then make that comment. And if you have questions, I'll be happy to also make sure I answer all questions. Let's see, we can talk now and I can give all answers. There we go. And so have you ever had yourself a streak of bad luck? Now, let me tell you, I've had a streak of bad luck. And the first thing of that bad luck, I've been in business for 20 years, and the state comes along, changes some regulations. I was at the point of getting ready to sell my business. My business was valued at $3 million. I owed, including the mortgage on my home, owed a total of about $500,000. And so, that's like $2.5 million clear if I sold my business at that point when I had my business valuated. But then if I wasn't quite ready to sell, so I was thinking, put it up for sale about 3 years away. I had it evaluated just so that I know what I could do in the next 3 years to raise the value of my business up even higher. Who knows? Maybe I'd end up being able to get $5 million for the business. Well, then what happened a year after that, after I went through this process with this business broker, the state changed some regulations, and those regulations, it took a year of meetings with businesses. They met with every single business in the state to make sure that every business could comply. The state says that this is the biggest change in business regulations in the history of the state. And sure enough, it was a big change. And as a result, there were 14 companies that after the year went by and then the law came into effect, there were 14 companies that ended up having to have the state come into their business and say, hey, I can't comply with these new regulations, so help me find a solution. And they sent out these special teams into these companies to find solutions. And I don't know how many companies they actually went out to find solutions, because I'm sure that some of the companies, they were able to help them to find solutions. But then there were 14 companies that they couldn't find solutions for. They could not find a solution to help the company comply with the new regulations. And so therefore, they basically told these 14 companies, we will go ahead and pay your employees unemployment, but you're going to have to go out of business. And so, of course, then if you got a business that can't operate legally in the state that you do business in, how much is your business worth? Really, at that point, it's worth no more than what you can sell for the assets, the hard assets. And oftentimes, what's the most valuable part of a business is not in their hard assets, but their customer base that they built, so that you can go and say, yes, if you buy my business, you're going to get this many dollars worth of sales every year. And that's part of the assets that you sell. But obviously, if you lose that asset, then you're left with your hard assets, things like you owning cars, and in my case, I forklift and warehousing equipment and vehicles and things of that nature. So you start selling that stuff. In my case, then, this was during the recession, stuff that I had to sell was for 5 cents on the dollar. And I lost over $3 million and I went broke. That was the beginning of my bad streak. When you go from, I was making a 6-figure income, I was living very good and enjoying my life. And you go from being up here to being down here, it's a hard drop. And that happened quickly. And so at any rate, when that happened, then I had to reinvent my life. And but things just didn't turn around. The economy wasn't right, and things didn't pick up for me. And so what happened is that just had this series of, it seems like one bad event after another. I had started living my non-monogamous lifestyle. And in living in my non-monogamous lifestyle, then if I was in a place of bad energy. And one of the things that with this is about law of attraction. So that's why I say that step back and see what kind of patterns that you can see in the options that you're being presented with. And so for me, even it affected my dating life, because we create this energy about ourselves. Imagine, how it feels that when you're just feeling on top of the world, it's like, nothing can go wrong. Everything is just so amazing. You really are feeling like you are flying high. And you know how that is. Well, we call that your energy level. And so as the higher your energy level gets, then the higher caliber of options and opportunities you attract to yourself financially, with your health, and with your relationships, your sex life. And so, once you start going downhill with your energy, where things just are feeling bad all the time, it's like you hate to wake up and get out of bed in the morning. Your energy is down here and not flying high. When if it's down here, what you are attracting to yourself is other people that are also down here. And so that you can suffer together and you can commiserate together, be miserable together. And when you do that, you start attracting those people into your life that then, like in this case, then that's when I got into my relationship with a woman that was a lovely woman. We loved each other deeply, but she was also a level down here. And so then we got into a relationship and we went along in love, deeply in love for a year, having great sex for a year. She was a single woman. She wanted to be married. Well, but I was already married, so I couldn't be married. I couldn't ask her to marry me. And so she decided then that whoever married her would have to accept her, the fact that she comes with a lover. But then a guy came along and asked her to marry her, and he wouldn't accept that she comes with a lawyer. So he gave her the option. You either marry me and get rid of your boyfriend, or keep him and you won't see me ever again. Well, she financially was also at a place like where I was, really struggling and having an extremely hard time. Well, on the other hand, he was doing well financially. And so she then says, well, I'm going to marry him because he gives me the marriage license that I want, because I kind of I'm a social butterfly and kind of run in high level society circles. And it's important then that I be married to a businessman. And so then she decided to go ahead and marry this guy. And so it worked out for her. But then what happened with me is that we've been in this relationship for over a year, and she told me, she says, yeah, any man that comes along is just going to have to accept that I come with a lover because I'm too much in love with you, Mark, to let you go. But then her highest need was for being married with someone that met her society approval and all that. And this guy comes along, and so sure enough, she broke up with me. And so, talk about, I was at the bottom already. But then my energy, and it just really sunk, And then my wife, she says, well, Mark, don't come to me looking for your sexual needs or your emotional needs. And my energy took a dip. And so those are times when your energy takes a dip. Those are times that you have to understand then that the people that'll be coming into your life are down there at that same place with you. And so then it's going to make it really much harder to get yourself out of that hole, because they may be there in that same place with you, and they may be actually helping to hold you into that hole. And so it's really tough then to get to where you're flying high again. And so for me, it just seemed like one thing happened after another, after another, after another, even to where then last year, I ended up taking and had a vacancy, this rental house I own, there was a vacancy. And so I had so much trouble going on in my life. I didn't want to mess with having to spend a lot of time finding a renter for that rental house. And so I just went ahead and took somebody that got into the rental house and figured that she'd make a good long-term tenant. But see, she was also down here at this level. Actually, she was probably a little lower level than where I was. And so I put her in that house, and for a year and a half, it was fine. She paid her rent on time. Everything was fine for a year and a half. But then the last year and a half, she cost me over $30,000. And I had to have the courts evict her, and that was expensive and caused me a tremendous amount of stress. And so this whole idea, though, is that if your energy is running down here, then that's the time where don't take any options at that point, because the options that are being brought to you are of other options that are down here. And so instead, do the work that you need to do to raise your energy up to here, so that you don't have to be flying at the top of the world again, but you certainly want to take and start moving your energy up. You see, for me, because then the next thing that came along in my life is my wife. She comes along, she says, Mark, we're broke. You're not making the money anymore. I had to go out and get a job. And so my boyfriend, he says that maybe I should come and live with him, and I'm going to go live with him and divorce you after 33 years of marriage. All this went on in a very small period of time. And so it's like you talk about a nosedive. I was taking a nosedive. And so finally then, it's all worked out for good. I think, in fact, it was all meant to be. But I had to one day wake up and realize, wait a minute, my life does not exist down here. That's not where my life is at. That's not who I am at. I'm not a low life person. I'm a high life person. And I want you to be a high life person and live a high life. And for you to live a high life and be a high life person, then what that takes is making the right choices with the options that come to you. And sometimes then taking a knowing where your life is and saying, no, I'm not going to make any choices anymore. In fact, you just take and say, stop, and I'm going to work on getting my energy up. And it doesn't take long. Really, I mean, you're talking, it can all turn around for you in a matter of days, where your energy, you bring your energy up, your mental, your intellectual, your spiritual, your emotional energy. You bring that up. And when you bring that up, you then, because again, you don't have to be flying high, but you just start bringing that up, and then it'll start bringing better opportunities to you. And so those new opportunities that come, of course, then that raises your energy higher. And then new opportunities comes, whether it be opportunities for sex or opportunities for relationship, opportunities financially, opportunities for improving your health. All these kinds of things then will go hand in hand. And these new opportunities, the new options, that's what we're talking about tonight, is the options. Well, you got it. When you raise yourself first, then the options start to seek the level that you're at. And so then you see, oh, wow, great. I got a much better option now there, whether for sex or girlfriend or wife or relationship or whatever it is, financial or health, whatever it is. Once the options start coming along, because you raised your level a little bit, maybe if you're down here, you only raise your level to here, and then get an option here. Well, that makes you feel good. And so then that raises your energy level more. And then other options come along. And this is where the rich get richer and the poor get poor. Because if you're down here and you've got the energy of a poor person, you see, when I was down here, I would say I am not broke. Excuse me. I would say I'm not poor. I am broke. Poor is a place with your mental state and your emotional state. And I am not poor. I am broke. And I will be back flying high again. And so that's why, again, that even that saying, the rich get richer. And even the rich go broke. But so often you'll see these rich people go broke, and they'll lose millions or even billions of dollars, and they'll go broke. And then they're right back making money again and doing really good. And it's because even if they took a nosedive for a little while, they turn that around and they look at why they went broke, and they reinvent themselves. And so they get their energy back up here. There's an energy that you get just by saying, oops, put the brakes on, stop, stop. Okay, good. Now I can breathe. That board that you see behind me, where is it at? Right there. There we go. And you only see the corner of it. That board has the 3 words on it. It says, when things are spinning out of control, then you stop, you breathe, and you reset. You reset or you reinvent. For me, I had reset a few times, but then when my wife came up with her good news, then I had to totally reinvent. And that's then when I went to work reinventing and recreating my life and the life of my dreams. So let me just go ahead and look at the comments here real quick, see if there's anything I need to ask or answer. What is the meaning of life? Does a streak of bad luck have any influence over it? The meaning of life is different for everybody. You see, if you've been around non-monogamous lifestyles for very long, and maybe you haven't, but one of the things that I talk about is that we're very unique individuals, and within each one of us, we have a seed of greatness. And that greatness is there for us to discover, and is there for us to allow it to blossom and to grow and nurture. It's again, we've got the seed of greatness, and that seed of greatness that's within you, that you have a song to sing, that there's a whole stadium of people out there waiting to hear your song. But so many people go to their grave with their song inside of them because they never bring that greatness out of them. They never learn how to. There's nobody to tell them how to. And that's one of the things that's part of my message. I turn my mess into my message. And so a lot of things that we talk about is the stories of your mind become the stories of your life. And if the story of your mind is low life, where things are terrible, they're just going really bad, when I was down here, that was one of the things I'd say over, oh my God, just things are just going so bad. They're not getting any better, and you got to turn that energy around. And the story of your mind becomes the story of your life. And if the story of your mind was things are just so bad and they're not getting any better, or something I used to say all the time, and I had totally forgotten about this until just today, but go back 10, 20 years ago, I had this pattern over the years where I would just constantly, I'd say under my breath and then a little bit out loud once in a while, oh, I just hate this. Because I was working so hard to create my life and create the business, but I was efforting. I wasn't doing it with any understanding and knowledge of energy at all. I was just out there punching away at it, and I was being punched at as well. And every week I'd have things that come along. I'd say, oh, I hate this, and I would just want to scream. You ever been there? That's where I built that last business that the state came along and changed those regulations. That was the universe's way of finally helping to put me in a different direction. Because there were things that come along all throughout that business for 20 years that up to before the state came along that would come along and I'd just say, oh, I hate this. You see, and so talk about options, going back to our subject matter tonight. You see these options, that's another thing that I've learned through all of this. My mess became my message. And the message to you is that if you're saying to yourself, oh, I hate this, that's the universe telling you, change direction, reinvent, something, change course, because you're in the wrong place. See, it should feel good. And it should, so your relationships, if you're in a relationship that doesn't feel good, guess what? You need to change course. Now, sometimes it takes time to change course. Like, for instance, with me starting Non-Monogamous Lifestyle Association 11 years ago, when I became non-monogamous, I started conversations. Remember, I had spent 2 years transitioning to that point. And so I became non-monogamous, but I had non-monogamous friends, and these were non-monogamous business people. And so some of these business people and I would get together, we'd talk and have coffee, and I would say, one of these days I'm going to use my business skills to do some things within the area of non-monogamy. And so that was 11 years ago. Well, 2 years ago, I started this nonprofit association, Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association. So that took me, that process to get there, it took me, 9 years to get there. And even then, over the last 2 years, I have just been kind of pushing forward a little bit, not really tearing the world up. Because you see, the thing is, I've got 30 years, I'm 60 years old. I've got over 30 years that I've been self-employed. I built 3 businesses over the last 35 years of my life. I built 3 businesses, and I have remnants of all those businesses. It's like the home I live in right now. I have records stored here in my attic that I finally had to clean out of my attic that go back to the 1980s. That you can't just take in these records, you can't just take and throw them away. You got to have shredder services come and shred this stuff, you know. And when I pulled it all in my attic, I had this space that I cleared in my garage that was 4 foot wide, it was 4 foot deep, and it was 10 feet tall for all those records that I pulled out of my attic. And you can't just toss them, you know. And so I have a life. I've got 35 years of life that I am now trying to clean up. And so that has slowed my involvement with non-monogamous lifestyles, because I have not been able to just put my full-time efforts into non-monogamous lifestyles. So it's kind of like a part-time thing that I do, but I am slowly, where probably within the next 2 years, then it will become full-time. But even right now, I'm going to be putting my house up for sale in another 3 weeks. And then once that happens, I'm moving into the house that I used to have as a rental. And so once all that happens, then that is going to be a transition period where I'll have a little more of my time freed up, and I'm going to transition that time into Non-Monogamous Lifestyle Association. And so some of these things, sometimes, you know, you're just kind of stuck in a place where, you know, and like maybe where like I was with my marriage. You know, I was miserable sexually from the very first. I mean, we were virgins when we got married, but, you know, we're religious and in the church, and, you know, we didn't want to be a failure and have our go out and get a divorce. I remember a conversation, my wife and I were, the only time, once every year, we'd get into a big blowout fight. And it was always because I was so sexually frustrated and pent up that I would blow. And then my wife and I would end up talking about it. And she says, okay, well, I'm going to work on it. We're going to do these things. And so, you know, we'd try to work on our problems sexually. And so that was always a result of my blowing. And so one time I remember I called up her mom, and I said, can I send her back? You know? And so anyway, that went on for 20 years. Finally, after 20 years, we just kind of gave up, and we didn't keep working on the problem, because that was the thing. That was how we took care of our problems. Every couple of years, we'd come up with a new plan. You know, we're going to go out to these seminars. We're going to go, our most expensive plan was we're going to hire a sex therapist for a year and a half. We went to anywhere from 2 to 4 sex therapy sessions a week at $150 a session. And so that, for instance, sometimes we would both go to a session. Sometimes I'd go to a session. Sometimes my wife would go to a session. So usually there was 2 to 4 sessions a week that we were going to this sex therapist. 2 sessions a week, $150, that's $300 a week. 4 sessions a week, that's $600 a week. You know, 3 sessions was probably more the average. 2.5 sessions was probably the average when over a year and a half. 2.5 sessions at $150 per session, that's $375 a week for 2.5 years. So you don't think that's a chunk of change? That's a chunk of change. And where did that get us? It didn't. It didn't get any satisfaction sexually for myself or my wife in that year and a half. And so, you know, but we're just grinding it out. Well, let's come up with another plan. We got to work on this. We got to keep working on this. I have a video I made, and it's called "Are You Thriving or Are You Efforting?" or something like that. And it's because we're all taught in our life that we just got to work hard. We got to work hard. We got to work harder. If it's not happening, we got to work harder. With my marriage, that was how it was. You know, well, you know, it's just not working, and so we got to work harder. Excuse me. I don't know if you've ever been there, but that's where I was stuck. And I was stuck in this whole system of saying, we got to work harder. Well, when you take a look at the best relationships that you know, when you take a look at the most successful people that you know, the people who are thriving. Now, success is not all about dollars. Oftentimes, the dollars will come to you if you've been successful in business. But the people who are thriving. Same thing with people in their health. This has been my case. Oftentimes I find myself just thinking, I've got to work harder at losing weight. You know? And if you're in that mode of, I got to work harder, you're going to just keep punching away at it and punching away at it. And guess what? It's probably going to be very hard to sustain that result. That was the thing with my business, you see. I worked 80 to 110 hours a week. I mean, 80 weeks was a short work week. I worked 80 to 110 hours a week for 15 years building my business. And I was working hard. Because you see, when I came out of college, the thing that I knew about myself, and that's how I got through college, is I could work hard, you know, and so I was willing to work hard. And so everything I did, I worked hard at it. And so here we are talking about options. You know, it's another way for you to know, are you choosing the right options? Are you making the right choice for the options that you have? If you're having to work hard at it, guess what? Chances are you made the wrong choice, because you're efforting, you're pounding away. And so instead, again, it's probably made a choice. Whenever I found that I made those choices, I've been down here with my energy, been running low, and those options come along and I take advantage of those options, but they don't put me at a place where I'm soaring and where I'm thriving and flying high. Because you see, energy-wise, with your feelings, your thoughts, and your words, all of that should be soaring. Because when you are, like I said a moment ago, you raise your energy level here, the options that come to you will be raised there. And then though that makes you feel better, then you raise them to here and you come to here. But guess what? If you are lowering your energy, guess what? Your options, and then you look at what happens, your circumstances in your world, and you go like, well, that's really crappy. And you keep lowering. And after a while, you're like me on this video, and you got no hands. Well, at any rate, you kind of get the idea, is that when it comes to the options in your life, you got to look for these patterns, and then you've got to make sure that you are raising your energy to attract options at a higher energy level, which then those options will help you to raise your energy a little more. And so you keep raising your energy, and as that energy level raises, so that you are flying high with the words that you are speaking, with the thoughts that you are thinking, and with the feelings that you are feeling. And when you're flying high in your sex life, and you're flying high with your health, and you're flying high financially, because that's where we want to get you. We want to get you so you're flying high in all those areas. And when you're flying high in those areas, then that creates the laws of attraction. I don't know if you know much about the laws of attraction, but it creates this whole thing that where this energy you're at just brings. Seems like it seems like things just happen to you that are just keep snowballing in the good way, instead of snowballing and being downhill. They're just like, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Remember that. Or, you know, what was it say? People say that, you know, bad things come in threes. Well, you can make it so the good things come in threes. You know, really great, wonderful things come in threes. And when I turned my life around, when I reinvented my life, because that's what it took a reinvention of my life, learning how to be intentional and design and create my life to be able to live and have the life that I desire, instead of just having the life I got. Because I was sick and tired of having the life that I got. And instead, I wanted to have the life I desired. So you have to turn that energy around. And all you need is a little bit of an upswing to get a little bit of hope going your way. And then, like I said, things will start changing. You so just a little thing. Maybe it's just even the weather. Like, hey, today's just the sun is out, and it just feels great to be out today. For me, one of the things that this is particularly when I was down there in those low times, is that you have to figure out what grounds you. For my partner, Kat, one of the things, she's going through a struggle a little couple months ago, and maybe a month ago, can't remember. It was May 22nd, right after I left Ventura and came here to Seattle. It was because it was going to be the longest stretch that we've ever been apart. And she was having a hard time struggling with that. And her energy took a big drop. And so, I mean, we were talking on the phone, and I knew that it had taken that drop. And I told her, I says, tonight, this is in the evening hours. In fact, in Ventura, it gets dark an hour earlier there than it does here in Seattle. And it was about 7:30. So it meant she only had about a half hour of daylight. And I said, you know what? I know it's going to be dark when you get there. But right now, go to the beach and get yourself grounded. Because I know that that's where she gets grounded at. For me, it's going on a hike. That's where I get grounded at. And so sometimes that's all you need to do to turn things around. And that did it for her. She went to the beach, spent a little time getting grounded. Next day, woke up in the morning, spent time in meditation, and she started that meditation. Raises your energy level as well. You raise your vibration. And so then when you start doing these simple little things, then you'll start putting yourself into that feel-good area again. And when you put yourself in that feel-good area again, then things will start to happen in your life. But as the options then that come to you, you want to make sure that you're making the right choices, because the choices that you make can have an impact on you that can last a long time. And that impact can help you start heading you back in that direction. And so the way to know that is ask yourself, does this feel good? If it doesn't feel good, but maybe, there's an option, you think to yourself, well, look how much money they're offering me. Well, but does it feel good? Well, but look how much money they're offering me. Well, is it going to increase your abundance? Yes. Is it going to increase your liberation? Well, no. That means I'm going to be enslaved more. I'm going to be a slave. Yeah, that doesn't feel good. I'm going to have more responsibilities and more, things that I really don't want in my life, And so I remember I met a guy that this is one of the influences on me. He was in his 80s, and I met him bicycling. And he was in much better fitness and shape than I was. And he could outride me. And there I was in my 50s, and he's in his 80s, and he could outride me on his bicycle. And so I got a chance to chat with him. And he was someone who worked for Boeing, and was doing a really good job at Boeing. And before he retired, at 80 years retired, doing a really good job for Boeing. And they kept promoting him, and he reached a place where he took a promotion. And when he took that promotion, it just didn't feel good to him anymore because of the things that was demanding. It was stressful for him. And he was just always, feeling the burden of all this stress and pressure at work. And because of that, then he was not going out and riding his bicycle anymore. Prior to that, he would regularly get out riding his bicycle around, and was a cyclist. But then suddenly, with all that pressure and all that stress that came out, I just don't feel like going out for a ride this week, and I'm just so stressed. I just need to relax a little bit. Have you ever been there? You see, that's how these things start taking you downhill. In his case, though, a couple months into this went by, and he says, you know what? This is not working for me. I am going to wherever he had to go at Boeing. I'm going to go to the office, and I'm going to tell him that I want my old job back. I know I'm not going to make as much money because this was a big promotion. And so it's like, but I was happy at my old job. It felt good. I went out, I got myself out cycling. And so he told me that story. And he said that that's the job. He just kind of was stayed at that job, that level then, and that job, kind of at a middle management level. And he stayed at that level instead of going up the next level. He stayed at that level because he was able to maintain a life that felt good, where his words, his thoughts, and his feelings all felt good. And so for you, in choosing your options, then your words, your thoughts, and your feelings about that option should feel good. And ask yourself, does this help me to increase my abundance and my liberation and my freedom? Or is this going to decrease it? Is this going to help me to have better health and fitness? Or am I going to be working so hard that my health is going to be sacrificed? If your health is going to be sacrificed, it's your life. It's not worth it. Okay? And so is this going to help me to increase my abundance, my liberation, and my freedom with my financial area, with my health, and sexually? Oh, no, I don't want sex this week. I'm just too tired. I got too many other things on my mind. I mean, I've been there. I know what this is all about. And so it's like, no, I just really can't do it sexually this week. I don't feel inspired. I don't have the energy and the interest, And so I've been there with all of this. And so when you're choosing your options, first thing to ask is my life in a low level place where I shouldn't be making any choices, but instead I should be working on getting my vibe up? Or is my vibe up where I can make some choices, but then I've got to make the right choices so that they're going to raise my vibe more, and then other choices and options will keep coming to me that keep raising my vibe higher and higher. And that's how the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And that's financially. And you'll find that works the same in your health, and it works the same in your sex life. You find that people out there that are like, how's that person get all those people they enjoy sex with? I've had that asked about me. When I started to date Kat, she and I, we belonged to this group here in Seattle that was for polyamorous people. And she was a facilitator, where she facilitated events, and I was a facilitator. I facilitated events, not more like discussion events and meetups and meet and greets and things of this nature. And so we knew of each other. In fact, I had tried to hit on her, and she ignored me 3 times. I sent her emails, and she ignored them. And but then finally we connected one time, and so when that happened, then, and I'm sorry, there was somewhere I was going with this thought that I totally got sidetracked of talking about Kat, but and so I'm sorry, I cannot remember where more of my thoughts were going on that, and so that's okay. We'll just keep on going with this, and it's actually, and we'll go ahead and wind this down, but and just understand that I know, and so where my thoughts were going on that is that at that point I was just 2 months out of where I had hit my bottom financially with my business life, and then with my marriage life. I had hit bottom, and then after a couple months of depression, I decided I'd going to change my energy, and I started to raise that energy. And so I raised that energy, and that's then how I ended up attracting Kat. Again, I had hit on her for 3 times before. I had met her and seen her multiple times at different meetups that we would go to and be at together. And so we knew each other, but we never had that. We never connected, never had any interest in each other until I had raised my energy high enough to match hers, because her energy was up here. And so then finally, when I was able to raise my energy to that level, guess what happened? We connected. And that's how these things work. And so then when we connected, guess what that did? That raised my energy here, raised her energy here. And we've just been stair-stepping like this ever since. And our energy is going up and up. And we're getting to a place where now we're both thriving more and in a greater capacity, in greater ways. And so people have said about me when I met her, people said, because she was somebody in this circle of about 600 people that we circled in amongst. And since we were kind of the organizers or in leadership in this organization, then everybody knew us. Everybody knew me, and everybody knew her. And suddenly then they just like, I don't get it. I don't really see what she sees in him. And I don't get the attraction. She had a boyfriend at that time, and he was really like, what do you see in him? What do you, and when I first met her, the first time I ever met her in person, she was with her boyfriend. Now she's 12 years younger than I am. Her boyfriend was 10 years younger than her. And I had already hit on her 3 times, and I gave up, stopped hitting on her. And so then, I hit on her online, and she joined this organization and took over some leadership roles. And so I sent her some messages, one message, and then for about 2.5 months, in a 2.5 month period of time, sent her 3 messages, and not being pushy or anything, just kind of hitting on her, and but she never had any interest. And then like even her boyfriend. Then when I met her the first time I saw her, she's 12 years younger. He's 10 years younger than her. Oh, I see. She's just not into old guys. I must be too old for her. And so I just wrote her off. And so then, I'd see her at events once in a while, things like this. But you see, my energy was down here, and hers was flying up here. And so slowly, though, my energy rose, because I was working on myself. I was not working on dating. I hadn't really been dating. And so I was working on myself. When my energy then got to here, we connected. And believe me, there were a lot of people that knew us that's like, I really just don't get it. What does she see in him? And and so, I mean, she's, just like got this spirit and this energy. She's just very vivacious. I'm just this very serious business type person, and like kind of boring and dull, a little nerdy, and it's like, yeah, a lot of people. What does he see in her, or what does she see in him? It was easy for her to know what I saw in her, and so anyway, I've had people over in the last 11 years in my experience of being non-monogamous. I've had people quite oftentimes, because I've attracted people to me, women to me, not people. I've attracted a lot of women to me. And people would say, well, what is it about Mark that he's able to attract these gals? You ever gone out somewhere and you look at somewhere, or maybe somebody you knew, and you just say, I just don't get it. I mean, she's absolutely gorgeous, and I don't get what she sees in him. You ever met people like that? And yet they're just wonderfully matched as a couple. It's because it's a matching of energies. They both got the same vibe going. And so when you take and get your vibe up, then what happens is that you start attracting more vibes to you that just keep your energy going up and up and up. And so those are the kinds of decisions when you're looking at options. Those are the things that you want to take and consider. First of all, is there a pattern here that needs to be broke? It's just not good. If there is, it's because you're running a low life with your vibe. And so work on first bringing that to a stop, and then take a breath, and then reset or reinvent. Figure out, what do you need to reset or reinvent? And when you then reset or reinvent that, you automatically, once you reset or reinvent that, you jump up to here with your vibe, with your energy level, your thoughts, your feelings, and your words coming out of your mouth. You know, the words coming out of your mouth will be a little more energized instead of, well, yeah, things are going okay. I'm doing okay. Yeah, life is great, you know. It really is. Life is really great. And so, yeah, you can tell when someone's got some energy in them, you know, in that. But it's what I call harmonic balance of your energy, your thoughts, your feelings, and your words have all got this higher energy, and you can tell that about people. It keeps going higher and higher. And so, going back to people that are rich, have you ever noticed they all seem like they're very charismatic and very confident and very suave. You know, I mean, they've got these qualities about them. And you're just like, oh man, I wish I could be that person, then I'd be rich too. No, they didn't start out that way. They went through this process. They raised their vibe with their thoughts, their feelings, and their words, raised their vibe, their energy that came from their thoughts, their feelings, and their words. And as they raised that vibe, guess what? The options that came to them were also matching where they were at. And when they matched where they're at, then their vibe went up. And then options went up at that level. And then they went up. And the options go up. And that's how it works. And you can stair step your way up with the options that you select and the choices that you make. You can stair step your way down as well. I've been there. And so I want you to stair step your way up. And thank you very much. Now, I don't know what happened on my screen here. There was chat and conversation going on. And this is probably about a half hour ago. Oh, there we go. So let me just real quick, I'm going to read through these to see if there's anything that I haven't addressed yet and make sure I address your questions. So question was, what is the meaning of life? You know, you have your own individual greatness. And so the meaning of life is to find your unique greatness. That's a seed that's within you, that's waiting to blossom and to be fertilized and to grow into the beautiful, unique individual that you are. And so that is the meaning of life. And so does a streak of bad luck have any influence on it? You bet it does. Remember, because I talked about that if you're running down here in this low life, then you have a bad streak. Well, if you don't bounce out of it, it's going to raise your vibe up. And if you don't do that, then yes, you will never, you see, when you're raising your vibe, that's like pouring fertilizer on that seed of greatness that's within you. And so you pour more fertilizer on her, pour, gas on the fire, and get that fire burning inside you. Get that seed growing inside of you. So that greatness is just wanting to bust out of you. And I talk about this with sluts. I think we all have a slutty seed inside of us. And that we are all sluts just waiting to bust out and have just a really great time sexually. But that seed so often has been so tramped on and stepped on and ground on, that it's like, well, no, I'm not, I can't be a slut. I'm not a slut, and all kinds of different things that we have going on. There's a wonderful slut in all of us. A slut's not gender related. Some people think it is, but no, you can be a guy and be a slut. You can be a woman and be a slut. And it's wonderful to be a slut when you're a selective ethical slut, so that you get to choose who you're slutting around with. It's really wonderful. And so let me continue going on the questions. Or your business or capitalism. Let's see. Does your streak of bad luck have any influence over your business or capitalism? I think I covered that in my own experience. And then this whole thing about stepping up, yes, it certainly does. Can any of the humans wake up, or do I have to ravens? They seem to be higher, but only having fun. I'm not sure what you mean on that. In evolution, I mean, stop talking about your ego, please. Think. Hello, Stephen. Hi, Stephen. When you talking about the best options in life in terms of relationships, and so that's what with the relationships. When you're making those choices again. Is it going to increase your abundance, your liberation, your freedom? Does it feel good? Does it increase that energy? With that energy that. And so, for instance, with if you are committed to a non-monogamous lifestyle, like this gal I mentioned, she's committed to. She knows that for her, that's the way to live her life. And Stephen, I know this about you as well. That for you that is the way to live your life. And so you want to make sure that you then are seeing this pattern of attracting people to you that want that same life as well. And that's what I attract to myself now. I attract these people to me that women, I attract these women to me that they want to be my slut. They want to be shared with other people, other men and other women, and then to give themselves to me. And it's a wonderful place when you start attracting these people to you. But you've got to get your vibe up so that you can attract those people to you. Because if your vibe is not up there, guess what? It can be someone that's sitting right next to you, just like when I met Kathy, well, not when I connected with Kathy, I should say. I had met her, I'd known her for quite some time, but I had to get my vibe up because yes, my Kathy, she's a slut, okay? And she's a wonderful slut. And I love for her to be a slut. And she's a hot wife, And so the thing is, though, is you got to get that vibe up going with that, your words, your thoughts, and your feelings, where you're just in this place where then you start attracting this to you. And so sexually with relationships, then, if you're running down here, like I said, where I used to be at down here, and if that's where you're at, then you're going to attract those kinds of relationships over and over and over to you. I've been there. I've been in that place where I'm attracting those relationships, over and over, that after a while, they just weren't working for me. And so, in fact, until my wife came to me and said, yep, this relationship is no longer working for me, Mark, so I'm going to divorce you and do something else with my life. And so when she finally did that, then yes, I took a little bit more of a nosedive. I was down lower, but then that finally is where I hit bottom so hard that it just shook me up and woke me up, I think. And so I stopped, I breathed, and I reinvented my life. And reinventing my life, I said, okay, where's my life financially? Where's my life with my health? And where is my life with my sex life? Where is it going? Where do I want it to be? What do I want to project myself in 10 years, 20 years? And for me, I mean, at this point in my life, I'm 60 years old. And some of you have heard me say before that when I am 75 years old, I want to still be attracting women who are in their 20s and 30s to have sex with me. And you know what? I'm doing that now. And so it's like, it's this whole thing where you get your vibe up, and you don't think that for instance, then when I attract a woman that's in their 20s or 30s to me that is in really nice shape and is just like really wanting to enjoy me, you don't think that doesn't cause my vibe to go just a little higher? You don't think that doesn't cause me to think, to feel, and my words to come out a little more positive? And so it becomes this whole thing then. Once you get this Stairmaster going, where it's going up, instead of the Stairmaster going down, get your energy going up, and your relationships, you'll start attracting the people to you to create the relationships and create those vibes so that the vibe just keeps going up and up and up. Okay? So any other questions? If not, then we'll go ahead and call this a wrap for tonight. And thank you very much for your contributions and for being here with me tonight. And this is Non-Monogamous Mark with Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association. And I encourage you to go ahead and click on the link in the description box right there below. Click on that link and get on our email list so that you can make sure that as we have things that we're going to be doing, then you'll be able to be on top of knowing all about some opportunities we have for you. That'll be opportunities for you to thrive and get your vibe going up here in financially and in your health and sexually. We want to help you to get your vibe going up here, and so that you can get things going right in your life so that you can ride that Stairmaster up and going up and up and up. And so that's what we want to do with you and in your life, and get on our email list to make that happen. So thanks a lot and enjoy your week.